try it because it's really good, but it is like 10th level of hell horrifying.
Wow.
Can it be horrifying?
It's worse.
Worse than this? It could be worse.
Lots. It's worse than amnesia. It's freaking terrifying, guys. But anyways, as you could guess from all of this, Japan has a lot of experience with haunted things, whether that be haunted places, ghost stories. So I'm going to go over both of these. So we'll start off here at Yokohama Park. It's a park in central Tokyo, and it otherwise is pretty unassuming. It's got a nice green space, and there's a fountain. There's actually a peace memorial to victims of the Tokyo firebomb that's in this park. And that's not the weird part. What's the weird part is this building here. This building was built to commemorate victims of the Great Kanto earthquake. There's a shrine on the inside, and if you don't know about the earthquake, it's one of the worst events in Japanese history. There were huge portions of Tokyo and lots of other towns that were just completely demolished. At the time, a lot of the structures were still made of wood. So you have earthquake and you have fire, and it just takes out tons and tons of these areas. So what happened is a lot of people went into the park hoping to use it as a refuge. There really weren't any buildings around it. So this really did not work out so well. So the entire park went up in flames. And this is how it was pictured in newspapers of the time. It was one of the rare weather phenomenon that meteorologists like to call a fire tornado. Happened in the middle of the park, and 30,000 people died. So to this day, people see ghosts in the park, people hear voices. There's a lot of very odd occurrences where people will see children playing and then look back and they're not there anymore. People will see very ghostly figures walking around in old-time clothes and then they disappear. So a lot of this stuff it has been documented and nobody really knows why it's occurring. The other really major area where you have a lot of these haunted occurrences happening in Japan is connected with World War II. And these are really concentrated in Okinawa. And there's already a couple of really creepy things in Okinawa, starting with this abandoned hotel. It was only half completed, and it looks like something a mad scientist would set up camping. And it doesn't help that Okinawa was the setting for one of the worst and most intense battles of World War II. So naturally, a lot of the sites on the island are associated with hauntings. One of the most notorious is Camp Henson. Camp Henson is a relatively normal-looking place. It's Navy-based, and this is what it looks like at night. This is Gate 3. And Gate 3 looks pretty unassuming. There's a lot of lights, but what you may not notice is people refuse to guard this gate. One of the reasons being it looks like this at night. And one of the other reasons being that they see a ghost who regularly appears so much that you have freaking Marines who refuse to guard this place. So what they see is they see the ghost of a World War II era Marine in full fatigues and blood all over himself smoking a cigarette. And he turns to the Marine on duty, asks him for a light, and if he says yes, he just disappears. If he says no, he burns them. So people have come out of this guard duty with cigarette burns all over their faces and arms. And so much so that people no longer use the gate. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. So, next we have Kadena Air Base. Kadena Air Base is home to this place. And it looks pretty unassuming. It's just a house. But what is odd is the story behind it. The people living in the house went full on Norman Bates. So what doesn't help is that the house is supposedly built over the burial ground of the samurai. And a very riding around on a horse headless. So, not one, but two killing sprees have happened here, both with the father of the family killing his wife, his children, and then himself. It's happened twice. So they closed down the house and now they only use it for storage. And weird things still happen. People go there on ghost tours, and people still hear phones ringing. They still hear stuff moving around inside. They hear children playing, even though nobody lives in there. The only thing that's in there is boxes. So yeah. Another thing is they had a group go in there and conduct a tour. So they went in and they did videotape, and what they found, or what they thought they found, was blood prints that appeared all over the walls and on the ceilings and on the floors. And then when they went back in later, they were all gone. So this is strange. Another odd place you wouldn't really expect to find anything is a golf course. Golf course on Kadena Air Force Base. So off in one of the side areas in the rough, there is a locked gate. And what is behind this locked gate is an underground hospital. So this hospital was used as a staging area and an ICU during World War II. And supposedly when the US Marines finally took over Okinawa, all the people inside committed suicide rather than be captured. So they don't let people in there anymore because they've had several people go in lately and do the same thing. So yeah, that's just weird. Atsugi Naval Base is on a different area of the island, and this is actually when the Japanese owned it. It was a staging area for kamikaze pilots. So naturally, you already have people who are going out of their way to commit suicide in crazy ways. So it's not surprising that pretty odd things tend to happen. People see in this naval base red eyes in the dark, constantly appearing and disappearing, taunting them, saying that we are the divine wind that brings retribution, is supposedly what they say. So that in itself is pretty disturbing. Continuing on our tour of Okinawa, because they just love haunted shit, is Gridley Tunnel. Gridley Tunnel looks like this. It is otherwise pretty straightforward. It's a one-way tunnel, and you can see pretty clearly through to the other side. Otherwise, not a very scary place. What is scary is that what supposedly appears there at night is the ghost of a samurai who got caught there by his enemies and very brutally destroyed. He doesn't just appear there, though. He appears in people's rear view windows. So imagine seeing that when you're driving down this way. You would freaking flip your shit. And then you would die. And then you would write something fairly stupid on your headstone. Last and definitely creepiest is Himuro Mansion. Himuro Mansion looks like this. It is on the outskirts of Tokyo, and very few people have actually seen it because it's so well hidden in the forest. So not many people know exactly where it is. It looks a bit familiar. That's because it was used as a setting for Fatal Frame. So if that's not a clue already, what was going on there is behind closed doors, they had some really creepy rituals going on. The family that lived there believed that in their mansion there was a portal to the underworld. And out of this portal would come demons if they didn't do something about it. So what they did is human sacrifice. And they got really creative with their human sacrifice. What they did is the patriarch of the family, every 10 years, he would pick one girl at birth and be like, it's gonna be you. supposedly anyone who goes there will eventually die, usually within about a week. And there have been several people who have been connected to visiting there, and they could suicide in like a couple of days. So I would strongly advise against visiting it. It is the only one on this list that has actually been documented by the government, and the government has now a perimeter around there to stop people from visiting. Because literally everyone who has visited has killed themselves